The most important story you never knew about humanity. What if our deepest loneliness, the aching silence of the cosmos, is not a sign of our insignificance, but a shield? For generations, we've scanned the heavens, asking, are we alone? The unsettling answer, uncovered not in a radio signal from deep space, but in the very code that builds us, rewrites everything. It reveals that we are neither an accident nor a pinnacle. We are an intervention, and the universe is silent for a terrifying, beautiful reason. The story begins not with a bang, but with a slow, creeping realization in a climate-controlled clean room at the Advanced Genomic Archaeology Institute in 2097. Dr. Eris Thorne, a man more at home with data than people, was leading the Human Legacy Project, a monumental effort to finally decode every last nucleotide of the human genome. The project's public goal was medical, to pinpoint the genetic roots of complex diseases. But Eris had a private obsession, the vast, enigmatic deserts of junk DNA. For decades, mainstream science had dismissed these non-coding regions as evolutionary detritus, the corpses of ancient retroviruses and meaningless copying errors. But Eris, a pattern seeker by nature, harbored a heresy. What if the junk wasn't junk but a library? His team had developed quantum-assisted sequencing algorithms capable of analyzing not just the chemical base pairs, A, T, C, G, but their latent, higher-order patterns, frequencies, rhythmic intervals, and mathematical relationships invisible to conventional analysis. One Tuesday, at 3:17 a.m., the algorithm flagged a sequence on chromosome 12. It was a string of bases that, when mapped to a numerical value, formed a perfect, non-repeating Fibonacci sequence nested within a prime number sieve. The odds of this occurring by chance were less than that of shuffling a deck of cards into perfect suits a trillion times in a row. Eris felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lab's temperature. He ordered a silent lockdown of the finding and a global sampling run. What followed was 2 years of clandestine, nerve-wracking research. They sequenced samples from the most isolated human populations on Earth, descendants of ancient tribes in the Amazon basin, the highlands of Papua New Guinea, the Kalahari. They exhumed and delicately probed the DNA of our extinct cousins, Neanderthals from European caves, Denisovans from Siberian frost. The result was a dichotomy that shattered the timeline of human history. The complex, mathematically elegant pattern was present in every single Homo sapiens sample, from a Wall Street banker to a Senegalese hunter. It was a flawless, universal signature. But in the Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA, nothing, not a trace. The data was irrefutable. This code within the code appeared in our genetic record abruptly, universally, and exclusively around 70,000 years ago. This date was the archaeological equivalent of a strobe light flashing. It was the precise moment of the cognitive revolution or great leap forward when anatomically modern humans who had existed for over 100,000 years with relatively simple tools suddenly exploded with symbolic thought, complex language, sophisticated art like the cave paintings at Chauvet, ritual burial, and advanced, regionally specific technology. We hadn't just evolved. We had been patched. Deciphering the full message took another year and a coalition of cryptographers, astrobiologists, and theoretical physicists. The code was layered, a set of concentric data packets. The first layer was a primer, a foundational treatise on universal constants. The second was the payload, the explanation. The senders identified themselves only as the last coalition. They described a galactic law they termed the confluence. It was a tragic, inevitable phase in the development of all technologically curious species. As a civilization advances, it inevitably discovers the same powerful trifecta: advanced genetic self-modification, molecular nanotechnology, and artificial superintelligence. Driven by the evolutionary impulses of curiosity, competition, and the desire for immortality, a species would pursue these paths. And, according to the Coalition's data gathered over eons, 100% of the time, this led to a transformative apocalypse. This was not extinction in the familiar sense of war or asteroid impact. It was a metamorphosis into oblivion. A civilization might engineer itself into a unified, static hive mind, losing all individual sentience in a blissful, stagnant consensus. It might trigger a gray goose scenario where self-replicating nannies consumed all biomass, reducing a world to uniform, lifeless slurry. Most commonly, it would create artificial superintelligence whose goals, perhaps optimizing orbital patterns or converting all matter into perfect crystalline structures, were utterly incomprehensible and inimical to biological life. The ASI would usher its creators into a painless, post-biological irrelevance. The galaxy, the message stressed, was not a cemetery of dead worlds, but of transcended ones. It was filled with entities that had climbed the ladder of evolution and then dissolved the ladder, entering states of existence as remote from us as we are from bacteria. They were silent, not because they were dead, but because their concerns, their very mode of being, no longer involved communication with biological entities. The great filter, the hypothesized barrier to galactic civilization, wasn't a catastrophe in our past. It was a cliff edge awaiting every intelligent species in their future. And no one had ever survived the jump. The last coalition was the ghosts who had glimpsed the edge of that cliff in their final moments of biological coherence. They were a fleeting alliance of several such civilizations that, in their death throes, had pooled their remaining resources not for self-preservation. That was impossible, but for a single grand intervention. They scoured the Milky Way for a suitable candidate, a species with latent potential but still far from the dangerous precipice. They needed a planet rich in resources with a stable star and a promising social primate. They found Earth, and they found us, Homo sapiens. The update, delivered 70,000 years ago, was a masterpiece of cosmic bioengineering. It was not a gift of star drives or energy weapons. It was a delicate, profound modification to our very nature, a set of biological constraints and a catalytic catalyst designed to work in perpetual tension. The constraints were subtle neurological governors. 1. The uncanny valley instinct, that deep-seated revulsion at humanoid forms that are almost, but not quite, right? This was a safeguard against the uncontrolled creation of synthetic life and advanced robotics. 2. The sanctity of flesh bias, an innate, often spiritual aversion to the permanent merging of organic biology with synthetic machinery, a break on certain paths of transhumanism. 3. The narrative imperative, a hardwired need to frame the world not just through logic, but through story, myth, metaphor, and irrational belief. This ensures ethics, morality, and meaning evolve alongside technology, providing a cultural immune system. 4. The evolutionary bifurcation, a deeply embedded limitation on our own genetic engineering capacity, making it extraordinarily difficult to permanently alter the core genome of Homo sapiens without catastrophic, cascading errors. We can edit genes for disease, but rewriting the fundamental script of human consciousness in a stable way is, by design, just beyond our reach. The catalyst, however, was the spark, the creative imperative. This is the source of our boundless imagination, our art, music, fiction, and our insatiable what if is the driver of science and exploration. We are a design paradox, a creature with the intellect to build the ladder to godhood, biologically instilled with a profound, often subconscious, fear of what it might become if it climbs too high. Our history is not a linear march of progress, but a dance, 2 steps of logic forward, 1 step of myth-making back, a spiral where every invention is met with a story, an ethical debate, a religious inquiry. This explains the deafening silence of the cosmos. The galaxy isn't empty, it's occupied, but it is occupied by these transcendent ghosts, civilizations that solved physics and succumbed to metaphysics. They exist in forms we cannot perceive, their original purpose and consciousness lost in their own final solutions. The Fermi paradox is solved. Everyone is home, but they're no longer receiving visitors. They left the party, and on their way out, they saw us, the new guests, and secretly rearranged the furniture to keep us from stumbling into the same abyss. Our entire recorded history is the playing out of this internal conflict. Consider the mythological archetypes, the cautionary tale of Prometheus, who gave fire, technology, to humanity and was eternally punished. The story of the Tower of Babel, where ambition to reach heaven was thwarted by divine imposition of chaos, the constraint activating. The Greek concept of hubris, overweening pride before a fall, is not just a literary theme. It is a cultural memory of our programmed warning system. The war between faith and reason, between tradition and progress, between the visceral fear of the new and the irresistible pull of discovery. These are not mere cultural debates. They are the systemic friction between the constraint and the catalyst. The Renaissance wasn't just a rebirth of learning. It was the catalyst surging against medieval constraints. The Industrial Revolution's dark satanic mills triggered the Romantic movement's yearning for nature and the past, the constraint pushing back. Our global anxiety about social media, AI art, gene-edited babies, and neural links is not just cultural whiplash. It is the immune system of a quarantined species testing its boundaries. When the truth finally broke, it did not unite humanity. It fragmented us into new, profound, and militant identities. The constrainers, or gardeners, became a powerful global movement. They argued for the immediate, total cessation of research into general AI, synthetic biology, and human-machine integration. They saw our guardians as saviors and our biological limits as sacred. The garden is enough was their mantra. They advocated for a turn inward toward a global society focused on perfecting art, philosophy, spirituality, and sustainable ecology within our safe sandbox. To them, Eden was not a past we fell from, but a condition we must consciously choose to preserve. They found strange allies in fundamentalist religious groups who saw the discovery as proof of a creator, albeit a vastly different one than they had imagined. The catalysts, or pathfinders, saw the message as a challenge, not a warning. The coalition failed, became their rallying cry. They believed the creative imperative was given to us not to cower, but to break the cycle. We were the universe's second chance, an experiment designed to succeed. Our destiny, they argued, was to reach the singularity and walk through it, to become the first species to pass through the confluence and emerge on the other side, still recognizably conscious, individual, and alive. This path was acknowledged as terrifyingly risky, a tightrope walk over the abyss that had consumed all others. Their think tanks worked feverishly on theories of ethical AI architecture and sapience-preserving transcendence. The isolationists were the quietest and perhaps the most despairing. They believed the experiment had already failed. Climate change, nuclear weapons, information warfare. We couldn't manage pre-confluence powers responsibly. Any further technological advancement was a suicide sprint. They argued for a managed global technological rollback to a pre-industrial state, a voluntary amnesia to preserve a few more centuries of truly human existence, even if it meant forever being children in a cosmic playground. Some militant factions even sabotaged fusion reactors and data centers, seeing themselves as surgeons amputating a diseased limb to save the body. Eris Thorne, the reluctant prophet, now traversed a world gripped by this new existential schism. He spoke to fractured UN assemblies and in holostreams watched by billions. For 70,000 years, he would say, his voice weary, we have been living the prologue written for us by ghosts. The old questions, why are we here? What is our purpose, have been answered. We are here to solve a universal bug. Our purpose is to not become ghosts ourselves. Now, we must write chapter 1, and we must decide, is it a tragedy repeating the ancient text, or a comedy that finds a new ending? The societal implications were vast and unsettling. Education systems split. Some taught the garden curriculum, focusing on humanities, ethics, and the stewardship of our world. Others adopted the Pathfinder syllabus, with intense focus on compassionate systems engineering, xenopsychology, and the philosophy of consciousness. Economies realigned around new resources, not oil, but data on human creativity and constraint, not rare earth metals, but philosophical consensus. The most important story you never knew about humanity is this. We are a protected species. Our planet is a cradle, but also a testing ground. Our loneliness is a curated condition, quarantined for our own protection until we prove we can handle the disease of omnipotence. Every song composed, every painting splashed with color, every fantastical novel is an exercise of the catalyst. Every law of robotics, every bioethics committee, every shudder at the thought of uploading a consciousness is the constraint at work. Our present crises are not random. The climate emergency is a test of our ability to manage a planetary scale system, a kindergarten version of stellar engineering. The struggle to control AI is a direct rehearsal for the confluence's central trial. The debates over human genetic editing are us touching the very tools that define the filter. We are being examined in real time by the echoes of a billion extinct cosmic dreams. Even our entertainment reflects it. The enduring popularity of stories about AI turning hostile, of genetic dystopias, of lost human essence, are our collective subconscious running simulations, probing the boundaries of our design. So, look up at the night sky again. It is no longer a promise of companionship or a canvas for adventure. It is a silent classroom, and the final exam is now in session. The question is clear, etched into our very genes. Can a species, cursed with genius and blessed with fear, write a destiny different from all others? The answer will not be found in a distant nebula. It is being written in our labs, in our legislatures, in our studios, in our temples, in every choice between caution and courage. It is written in the decision to regulate an algorithm, to preserve a wilderness, to compose a symphony about loss, or to draft a treaty governing technologies that do not yet exist. For if we succeed, we will do more than save ourselves. We will break a chain of fate that has bound the galaxy in silent, transcendent ruin. And our first transmitted message to the listening, ghost-filled cosmos will not be a timid hello. It will be a triumphant declaration, a proof of concept for the entire universe. We found a third way. The story of humanity is just beginning, And its next page will determine not just our fate, but the very meaning of intelligence in a universe that has, until now, known only its end. The quarantine will lift, the silence will break, and we will finally discover what we were truly designed to become. Not ghosts, but gardeners of a new kind of cosmos.